just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other.
Hello. Coach. Pro Advisor Coach Podcast. Simple secrets of the successful truth seekers. Here we go. What's going on, Coach? I know you're up in Buffalo today. Feeling toasty and warm I'm sure, up there.
Yeah, for a couple more weeks. Yes.
Yeah.
Excited to be up here. I'm playing some golf with some friends from childhood. We've been doing this a number of years in a row, and I think this is year 10 that we've gotten together, but year 9 for golf specifically. I don't think we played golf the first year that we got together.
Yeah, I think that's just a fantastic tradition that you've managed to keep our age, or our relative age, with families and impacts, but that's a good amount of years, and I know it's a good amount of people as well. Very cool.
Yeah, we're up to 8. I think we started at 4 years ago, and we're up to 8 now. One is my brother, so looking forward to spending quality time with him. And yeah, I think everybody was grandfathered in before they got married and before they had kids. So hopefully they have the stamp of approval for moving forward here.
Really wish I went back 10 years and done that. That would have been really useful. Very useful. So what's on your mind, Coach, other than that?
Making progress. I've been thinking a lot about how that actually happens with people, how it happens with myself. I've been journaling a lot about it, and I guess I kind of want to share some insights and maybe even some breakthroughs I've had, and then just get your perspectives, as I always value as well. So yeah, just thinking about how do I expand my clientele? How do I raise my coaching prices, or how do I charge more? And of course, my belief system that it's all an internal battle, right? So if I feel resistance to any of those things, then it's information for me to work on. As opposed to blocking them or suppressing them or pretending like they're not there, getting curious and inquiring about them and seeing what information they have for me to understand. And I'll just provide the quick synopsis of my progress with that is just, I think people can feel my resistance if I were to go to offer a higher price for coaching, or maybe have a prospect call not go so great because I'm thinking of something or I'm resisting my own self. And so where my conversation went in my journaling was like, what does it mean to heal? What does it mean to make progress with something? And I think we all know what we talk about when we say we're in that state of flow where we feel great, we feel unstoppable, we feel untouchable. There's a process to get there, I think. And that's something that I want to keep working at. I almost use the word perfect there, but I want to be careful not to use that, because it's all a repetitive game. It just keeps coming back to it, and you lose it if you stop practicing it. So anyways, there's a whole dump on you right there. You take whatever you want from that, and we can go whatever direction you want to go.
It's really, really cool to hear you get back to the reminder of the all an inside game. Where do you feel the resistance? Don't run away from the resistance. Ask it questions. Find out what it wants. Get curious about it. And then if you take that resistance to a prospect or a client, people, and try to override it, is that a good language for that?
What do you mean by that?
So if you take, let's say you talked about a client where you said you are changing the investment requirements for that particular engagement. Mm-hmm. And you said if there's resistance to it, meaning you make yourself do it, you override that, the client will feel your incongruence.
Correct.
Is that what you mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean to have the alignment internally so there's not resistance, there's a heal to make progress? And then you said it's all a repetition game. If you're not doing it, then you lose it for sure. And
Yes.
repetition gives you the nuance. We've made this distinction in this podcast before around repetition. Repetition from 1 to 10, the amount of difference between 1 and 10 is huge.
Mm.
1 to 100 or 10 to 20, nowhere near as big as 1 to 10. And then up to 100, you probably, and at a certain point, like it diminishing returns, but it still means that you're growing.
Mm.
So I got 1,000 repetitions. I might have to get to 2,000 repetitions to see a difference that I can actually tangibly see. So tie that for me, that repetition part, back to the healing and incongruence, if you can.
Yeah, I think I've conditioned myself up to this point to treat any uncomfortable situation as an opportunity. And as cliche as that sound, we love cliches on this podcast, right? Because there's a reason they're there. But I've conditioned myself, so whenever I feel uncomfortable, I get excited about there's a breakthrough about to happen because my awareness is about to expand. Those are my words. That's what I've come to describe it as I can't see something, and that's why I feel the way that I do. I feel resistance. I feel icky about it. I feel yucky. And so the only way to see what I can't see is to get curious about what I can't see.
Yep.
And so it's the repetition of that, like continually doing that
Wow.
every time I feel uncomfortable. Yeah, to now it's to the point of like I'm just in a state of like, okay, I'm always curious about like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? And I've almost developed my own process for how to address those things.
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? Because I'd work on that every single day with clients, and so it's so obvious to me now. It's like, oh, but this happens. All right, well, what do you want to do about that?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't expect that result, but okay, well, life happens for us. So what do you want to do with it? In fact, you didn't expect it, and now you can remember that life happens for us. Then, although that you experience something else that, and this thing is preventing you to get that, actually, what it means is that there's something better for you out there. So now you just got to keep going. Life is about playing again and having the ability to play again.
Mm.
So yeah, that concept's so important because it's always there. So no matter what happens, like it's win or you learn. Either I get the result I expected or I'd let to learn something else. Take the learn as much as you can because that's the investment and the thing that allows you to expand and have more awareness. I got to tie this all back to the example of the client stuff, though, right? Because that started the resistance pattern for you. So whilst that's all the case, and so my mind goes to repetition. Okay, well, go up. If rather than taking a precision scalpel to it, if you just take a hammer to it, is it just being bold enough to put yourself in the right mindset just to have that conversation with the client anyway, and just utilize language that feels supportive and transformational? Hey, client, we're working with you. Is it that you can't find the language because there's resistance, or is it you don't want to go down that road because there's a resistance? You just don't want to be that person, or something else.
Yeah, to me, it's just the feeling of it, and I think I know when I'm. This might be a harsh use of this word, but when I'm faking it, I understand the power of the usage of language. However, I think if I really believe in something and I feel it in my bones, it's going to come out much differently than words. How I would describe that is the difference between override as the word that you used, and them still saying yes to it and agreeing to it, and maybe they don't feel great about it because of whatever I'm giving off in that process of override. And hey, it might be good for a little bit, but it's inevitably it's built on a foundation of something that's not stable, for me at least. Versus if I do the work and then I have that conversation, I'm even more okay with that, with it not going okay because I've done the work. It's almost like I've worked out enough to where when I show up for the competition, I'm okay with whatever result comes up. And that for me is the difference maker.
That's a great description. I love it. I see it's the other side of that then, because my tendency, like my that's I find there's a ton of value in what you just said. And I think I personally have an opportunity to lay more into that. My my default tends to be more on the other side, which is just let's show up for the competition and see what happens, and I'm bound to learn something.
Mm.
I'll just go in there like I'll get something out of it anyway. If I show up to enough competitions, then like it's going to feel like I want to be there.
Mm.
Let's maybe think about like fighting, something in MMA, UFC, but also thinking about Thai boxing. If whoever's familiar with this, like the national sport in Thailand is Thai kickboxing, and kids do it from like 3 or 4 years old. By the time they get to be adults, they've already had 100 something fights in a ring with people watching them against people their age that they've been growing up. There's a lot to be said around like doing training with kids running around at 3 or 4 years old and working your way through and learning the basics of martial arts and the respect and the humility and slowly learning techniques, moving through different aspects of it to then taking your first fight when you're 20 years old with with a head gear on. Which one's better?
Yeah, it's like
I
different
don't
strokes
know.
for different folks. You probably have that process works for you, right? So you might as well go back to the well because you've gone to battle so many times using that analogy that it's comfortable
Yeah.
to you. Like even the uncomfortable is here's another uncomfortable situation. All right, I'm just going in, and that works for you. And I'm sitting here thinking about. I wonder if I do that after a certain number of times, will it become comfortable to me? Probably yes, right? The answer is probably yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The answer's probably less because that's why when you said repetition, I was like, that's it. Repetition is the mother of skill.
Hmm.
So the repetition you're talking about is the power you've developed in your framing of the situation to go directly to this is an opportunity. Let's get curious. What can I learn here? How can I expand myself?
Yes.
And that way round, it seems that it's clear to me that that's the better way to do it in terms of what you're giving to yourself.
Mm.
It's less raw in terms of putting yourself in a position you don't want to be in. Maybe there's back to the battle. Like if you have enough battles, maybe a couple of getting into battle, but you might just get yourself killed. Like it could be something like that. But if you're sitting around like with the strategy board with all the other generals and looking about where you can might place pieces.
Yeah. I also just thought of this too. I think maybe we're closer on this than we think because I think when I think of your example, I think of like getting into state, right? That's what I think of. Like you can get into that place to where like you can
Yeah,
conquer whatever. You're like what's going to come out of you is just going to flow. And I guess my process is my way of getting into state. So it's the same thing,
yeah,
I think. I just
yeah,
feel more confident with like the internal exploration. It's just my process, right? To get to that place to where when I speak about it, it feels natural. I think you get to that same place too with what you do, and then it goes well, right? It goes better for me the way that I do it because of the state that I'm in, and then you have a different way of getting to the same state and having it go well for you.
yeah. It depends. Of course, we're back to the tension, right? One extreme, the other extreme. They're so far apart. The closer we get to the middle, the more similar than they are different, and we start to look at real small things in the nuance as we get to
Mm.
it. Because as you said, it's really the same thing. It's like a different route in, right? It's like
Can you
so
say
it's a
that again
double.
with the tension?
Like,
The tension
things,
analogy?
yeah, like you got. I explained this to someone I was back in England last week around just a train line. I was thinking about the train line in Central Line train in London. One end of that train is West Ruislip, and then one end of the line is Epping. And there's about 40 different stops. It goes from one side, like goes from one side in Essex that goes all the way to west side of London, and everywhere in between you can stop, right? And West Ruislip's very different to Epping, right? But the closer you get to the middle, those things are obviously different, very different. But as you closer you get to the middle, the more similar it is than it is not similar.
Mm.
So you get the opposite effect, right? And so then it's often people think about, well, you're that and I'm that, or we're never going to agree. But most of the time, you're not at stop 1 or stop 40. You're at stop 26 and 35.
Mm.
And what you're actually talking about is bits of nuance that are useful, but it's more useful to realize that you're actually closer and actually more aligned than you'd be willing to figure out the differences in those couple of different stops. Like I got off at stop 26, you got off at stop 35. We're 9 stops. Let's just catch a bus or meet in between. All right. Versus, where the hell are you? I'm not coming all the way over there. You come to me.
Interesting.
I just walk. It's only 9 stops.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. Mm.
I think it's really important to think about what the parameters are important for you or for the individual, because they've got the process of what's worked for you, and it's everyone's got a different version of it, right? And it's like based on all the experience you've got and all the training you've got, and you figure that out and what's worked for you. And there's no judgment involved of what anyone's version of that is, because it's just what's works for them. But it's also to understand, okay, well, what do I need right now? What levers do I need to pull? What's more important to me now versus what was important before that I developed this principle? For me, urgency and speed was always important. And that's something I'm working actively against at the moment. And so my just get on the battlefield and start swinging. I think I like the other analogy better. Just get into the competition and start playing, right? Or just go to go to that and just start playing and see what's up. Is a much quicker route, because you know what? Guess what? I might even get lucky. I might even get to the final. Maybe I'll win the damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm just back in the training room, I'm not going to win anything. But if I spend more time in the training room, I'm also not going to get hurt when I go to that event, or less likely to, at least. And I can learn in a place where I can stretch myself safer. I'm not going to have any big events, which there's more upside, but there's much more potential downside as well. So just going, what do I need right now? Okay, so maybe that approach, my default approach, needs to be more specific and accurate, depending on where you are or not.
Yeah, you said you're actively like fighting against that urge. What does that look like for you? How do you manage that or tame that, or how do you counterbalance it?
This stretches all the way back to something you said a long time ago, Coach, around the 80% rule for maximum output. Right, 80% should be your 100%. And I think actually it's even less than, for me, what it needs to be. Something like 70%. I need that 30% that's not used in the execution of doing things. Because if I haven't got that 30%, I can't look at the other 70% and going, the things that I'm doing, are they the right things? If I'm above that 70% threshold, I'm essentially in the water up to my mouth. Maybe I can breathe, but every now and again, like I'm like bobbing down into it, like I can barely breathe, but I can't speak,
Mm.
and so I can't get out to see what I'm even looking at, what I'm even doing there. And so before, the allure of going further than 70% was just this time, it'll be all right. Let me just get it done. Once I get it done, I'll be all right. I can go more. It's fine. I'll find more capacity. I'll find a way of getting out of the pool without sinking. The distinction that I make that's more helpful this time, is a bit stronger, is that it's not sustainable anything other than maximal of 70%. And maybe it's not exactly 70%, but around that mark, maybe even lower, because I'm always going to have to come back to it I'm always going to have to come, like if I'm at 80, 90%, whatever time I actually do have enough and get out the pool, I'm then going to have to come back to like 40, 30% of execution for a long period of time, where I so like try and catch my breath. So the only sustainable part is to know that even if I feel like I can add more, resist that, because I know that 70% is actually enough to achieve much more than being all in. And that's not to say sometimes you can't have sprints, but those sprints need to be very clearly defined of output and timelines. That's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, because if you don't, then you're liable to have it run away with you, and exhaustion, burnout. That's when those things come up.
Yeah.
Um, I wrote down a couple things. This will be my takeaway for today. But I had 80/20, right? And on the 80 side, I had execution,
Yeah.
right? So I might put, I don't know, something like strategy, right? If you're 100% executing, you can't strategize.
Right.
I read a quote the other day that said you can't see your own reflection in running water. I thought that was great. It's another version of
Ooh.
you can't smell flower or a rose at a dead sprint, right? So
Yeah.
80/20 execution versus strategy, and I would also add 80/20 is survival mode versus creativity.
Oh yeah.
And when you're in that survival mode, you can't be creative, but we have to execute, right? We have to produce. So it's this pendulum goes back and forth, but we never want to. It's like a car engine, right? We never want it to go past that red line when we're putting the pedal down. But if we have to, it can go beyond it for a little bit, like you said, and as long as it comes back, and we know that it's going to come back.
Yeah. And it's such a gravity to it, for me at least, to go down that road. And again, like being in England the last couple of weeks, seeing how some things are there with my family and stuff. Like it's not even a question for some that there's any other option as to red line all the time. That's just how life is.
Yeah.
And then I'll keep going until the engine blows up. Hope it
Mm.
doesn't today. And like cross your fingers and keep driving.
Yeah.
But what do you? That's all I got. And then complain about it being at red line all the time. Because if this isn't enough and I can't red line anymore,
Yeah.
push harder, won't you? So perhaps my takeaway is all of those things, because those, that you can't have the strategy if you're executing all the time. Like all of this stuff is so important to me personally right now. But overall, it comes back to the tyranny of the urgent. You want to hear about more tyranny of the urgent? It's a Pro coach concept, but it's basically the same thing we're talking about here. So I'll leave on this, that if you want to be more productive and you're running really fast, take something away. It feels like you should have more to be more productive. It's not working if I'm running really fast. Let's do more. Take something away. And if that doesn't work, you're like, okay, all right, I'll buy it for a minute. Take something away. Run. It's not working. I'm not being productive. The instinct immediately is going to be put something back in. But of course, now we can really intellectualize about it. It's not that. It's take something else out.
Mm.
And so really the concept is, if you're feeling there's too much going on, you're not feeling as productive as you want to be, take something away. As counterintuitive that feels. And then if that doesn't work, take something else away. Just keep taking things away until you become productive.
Mm.
Even if you take it all away. Because the alternative is that you keep going and don't feel productive.
Mm.
It will not fix itself. And adding more will not work. As counterintuitive as my own mind, I'm telling myself that as I'm saying the words, because it feels a lot for me.
Mm.
Got to stick with that. So important for me. Hope that resonates.
Iron sharpens iron, Coach. Always appreciate this.
All right, let's get out of here. Take care.
Have a good one.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.